Well, welcome everybody to the second panel of the Private Sector Capacities Day. It's actually called Destinations for Tomorrow, Capacity Building and Sustainability in the Tourism Industry. This over here will be explained to you in a couple of minutes. The travel and tourism sector represents a significant contribution to the world economy and the development of local communities. Yet it faces a dual challenge. It is highly vulnerable to climate change, while also a significant contributor to it. The sector's complexity, with its diverse stakeholders, offers both challenges and opportunities. And when all these sectors come together with the correct skills, knowledge, and tools, tourism can make a meaningful contribution to global sustainability. So the relevance of the sector is undeniable. Today, we are having the first ever tourism day in a COP, in a climate change COP. So that's already something that tells us how this is having a spotlight in the conversation. Here at the Capacity Building Hub, we will approach the topic through the lens of capacity building, of course, focusing on on-the-ground action and best practices that can empower all these stakeholders to lead the transformation. So, today's program will start with the opening remarks from a dear colleague, Gonzalo Canseco, and then we will have a panel with 4 experts on sustainability. So without further ado, I invite Gonzalo Canseco to the stage to deliver the opening remarks. Gonzalo is the Research and Development Director at 1.5, and he was former special advisor to the UNFCCC, provided several consultancy services from 2019 to 2022, and he is also founding partner of Symbiosis Economica. So Gonzalo, please come to the stage.
Good morning. Thank you, Ali. My job this morning is quite simple. I'm just going to provide some background to frame the more interesting discussion that will come right afterwards. We thought it might be useful to just provide a brief overview of the challenge involving capacity building in the tourism industry. So we called it learning to change the tourism in this challenge. So, I mean, I'm probably preaching to the converted, but for many years we have been saying, and it's a cliche, that business as usual is no longer tenable. Nevertheless, we still see that change has been very slow in general, not least in the tourism industry. And we believe that businesses of all sizes need to do 3 things: rethink their activities, retool their operations, and above all, retrain their staff. It was the previous way of doing things that led us to the current crisis, so we definitely need to change that profoundly, and we need innovative ways of doing this, and we must develop and disseminate new skills for a green circular economy. And I'm sure you've heard it all before, but it's not easy to do so. We must see this as an opportunity rather than a problem. I have to confess that I'm a late convert to capacity building. I worked a lot in the finance sector. I focused for many years in driving investment. I was a firm believer that the key was finance, and of course it is the key. But now I've come to understand, thanks to Alejandro and his colleagues, that it's the three elements are essential for genuine change. You need finance, of course, you need technology, but it won't happen without capacity building, because ultimately all climate action is human activity. It all involves people doing things in a new way. So now I believe that capacity building is the single most critical driver of change. So without new skills, we will not be able to achieve the transition. Briefly, you all probably know this. Tourism accounts, it is estimated that it accounts for about 8% of greenhouse gas emissions. The travel and tourism industry, at least 12% of all food waste globally, 2.5% of CO2 emissions worldwide generated by aviation. Hotels and other types of accommodation account for 0.16% of greenhouse gas emissions. I'm old enough to remember what the Riviera Maya and Cancun looked like before we had this amazing and very successful development, but it wiped out an ecosystem that was unique. We can't keep making that same mistake. We must find a way to reconcile tourism and travel, which are essential activities, with an adequate protection of the environment. We must prevent tourism from encroaching on the environment and destroying biodiversity across the globe. So we believe this is essential, and we must, to do this, we must, as I said, retrain everybody involved in the tourism industry. So we believe green skills point the way forward. What do we mean by green skills? Well, there's a huge variety of activities, but it involves policy design, operations management, urban planning. I was recently at a seminar in New York where it was found that a significant proportion of the emissions reductions we must achieve can be done simply by better design. So we can have significant emissions reductions by achieving energy efficiency, and that is essentially design. So it's just one example that will involve the way hotels, in general, the hospitality sector is conceived. Of course, monitoring and science. About a couple of weeks ago, LinkedIn published a very interesting study about the green jobs revolution, as they called it. It was interesting because it's a massive, as you can imagine, a massive sample of what is going on in the job market across the world. According to their study, green jobs, which are the ones that cannot be performed without extensive knowledge of green skills, account only for 1% of the labor market. Greening jobs, as they call them, include those that could be performed without green skills, but typically require at least several of them. And that's about 9%. So currently, only 10% can be called either greening or green. And you have 90% that have either greening potential or currently don't require any green skills. What we expect to happen over the next decade or so is so the green area will continuously expand in response to what we have to do to address the climate crisis. Where are those skills going to be needed? In energy efficiency, environmental awareness, sustainable design, as I was saying, agriculture, of course, renewables, that's already happening. As you know, the ratio of investment in renewables is twice as large as in fossil fuels, energy production, and so on. We can see the trends across the world. You see in almost every region in the world, the demand for green skills, green jobs is expanding rapidly. We see the green economy requires workers to upskill in green and enter greening and green potential jobs according to that classification. So capacity building and training is essential for implementing those green skills that the emerging new labor markets are demanding. So we can shape a sustainable future for all. That's the point of our discussion. I'll just end here so that we can listen to the real experts on this issue. Thank you very much for your attention, and over to you. Thanks.
Yeah, you're probably going to need this. Don't worry. Thank you, Gonzalo. Thank you for this. I really loved the closing remarks on capacity building can help turn intentions, turn ideas into real action. So that's something that I really love about the Capacity Building Hub. So now we are turning to our panels. I kindly ask our panelists to come join me at this very comfortable chair so we can start our conversation, please. Today we have the honor, and let me just tell you, while I'm speaking, I believe the first ministerial meeting on tourism is also happening at this point. So we really, really appreciate the presence of our panelists here at this moment. Before me joining you there, let me just introduce you to our panelists very quickly. So, Ms. Paloma Zapata, she is the CEO of the Sustainable Travel International. She has over 15 years of experience in sustainable tourism and economic development. Paloma has implemented impactful initiatives in more than 25 countries or so, and her work includes developing sustainable tourism strategies for Belize, Bermuda, Colombia, and Panama, among others. Mr. Randy Dorvand, here, he is the CEO of the Global Sustainable Tourism Council. Mr. Dorvand has 20 years in senior leadership roles at major tour operators. He has also focused on sustainable tourism projects in Southeast Asia and South America. He has worked with several international organizations such as UNESCO, the ILO, and he has served on numerous tourism boards and committees worldwide. Ms. Beverly Smith, she is the head of partnerships and stakeholder engagement at the Sustainable Tourism Global Center. She has had several different roles on government association inspector and institutional reviewer with education within a range of civil service experience in the local and regional governments in the United Nations and covering advocacy, policy creation, and analysis. Finally, Mr. Renato Mbamilo, he's the head of research and policy association of Tanzanian Employers, Association of Tanzanian Employers. I kind of missed a comma there, sorry. And he has relevant experience in working directly with local communities in Tanzania. So this will be very interesting to hear you all. I will come up here with you. Hi. Perfect. So I would like to start this first round of questions. We will have three. May I sit here? Yeah, I feel kind of like far. So we will have three rounds of questions. The first one is focusing on challenges. The second one, we will be talking more about building up green skills. And at the end, we would like to hear more, yes, about solutions, but also about the examples from your experiences. In that regard, I would like to start with you, Mr. Dorvand, on what are the main challenges that you see in the travel and tourism industry, especially regarding capacity building in sustainable practices.
Well, there are so many challenges. I would say main challenges are lack of full awareness of what we really mean by sustainability. Sustainability has to be holistic. The GSTC criteria that we manage as global standards include social issues along with environmental and so forth. Big brands that have their own sustainability programs don't necessarily push them hard enough. And they tend to have like a consultant come in, and you need the whole staff to be trained. So there's sort of somehow resistance, not a resistance, just neglect to really train everybody. Now, you know, a broad view of sustainability should be had by managers and leaders, but workers need very specific things. So you need some creativity to kind of break training down and say, you know, housekeeping people just need to learn these few things. F&B people need to learn that statistic that travel and tourism has 12% of food waste in the world. Food waste is such a big issue on greenhouse gas emissions. I don't think it's well known enough. And in tourism, we can do tremendously. We see so many examples, just quick action for no cost, just a little bit of training to reduce food waste. Hardly anybody knows that. When somebody comes in, there's dramatic results quickly at low cost, but hardly people know that. So we just need to, first of all, just get the word out that, there's training available, low-cost training. There's all sorts of tools. Get businesses to go beyond the idea that it's just one person's the engineer in the hotel or an HR person and the tour operator that kind of coordinates something. You got to teach pieces to everybody. Housekeeping needs to know some things. Food and beverage needs to know some things. Then I would say also another challenge is that so much of travel and tourism is informal economy and SMEs. So I just spoke now about big brands that don't do it well enough with the different pieces in a holistic way. But then go beyond the mass of tourism that's SMEs, that's informal economy. Wow, what a big challenge to get at them. We need far more low-cost or zero-cost online training and awareness. It's got to reach the right people, the right skill set. It's got to be broken down. Tourism is incredibly complex. Just think of all the subsectors in travel and tourism. You got aviation, you got rental cars, you got hospitality, you got attractions, you got tour guides, you've got food. So you need to have pieces going out in all the different directions. So it's an enormous task. Instead, what we see is sort of just, a few things that just try to get at, the big picture for everybody, but we need to get a lot more creative and innovative than that. So I could go on and on about challenges, but I'll stop there for now.
Thank you very much. This talks directly to the complexity of having a sector that is so multi-layered with so many actors in between. Now, I would like to ask Ms. Paloma Zapata kind of like the same question, but really targeted to the specific challenges that developing countries and island nations face.
Yeah, absolutely. With the SIDS and developing nations point of view, they are resource constrained. So there's of course that challenge in order to implement sustainable practices and to implement infrastructure as well in these destinations. Access to education and training is also a challenge in these destinations, but also mainly they are over reliant on the mass tourism model. I think this is an important, connotation because in order to change that into a different kind of model, into a greener, decarbonized kind of model, there's a risk, a livelihood risk. And I like to tell stories and how to to think about what the implications are. I was doing a carrying capacity study for the island of Aruba, and we were doing an experiential carrying capacity approach, right? So we had, for example, an array of visuals in order for the stakeholders to be able to identify what was their ideal condition and threshold. And these were talking about, or these pictures were looking at spaces and sites where you had concentration of tourists, right? So for example, a beach, all the way from a pristine beach with hardly anybody to a very congested beach. So if you when we presented these slides to the tour operators, their threshold and their ideal condition was highly concentrated, a highly concentrated space, because that means that there's tourism and then they can put food on the table, right? This means there's business for them. Of course, you showed it to an environmentalist and they wanted no one there, right? So it's a different perspective. This is an experiential carrying capacity. So this is the type of tourism that is bringing them livelihood. So this is, this is a component. Another one is, of course, SIDS are more vulnerable to climate change. So these are different kinds of needs, that they have. And so you have to engage and understand what those needs are. And going back to the tourism model, to the mass tourism model, I myself am from the Caribbean, from the Dominican Republic, and I've seen, beaches, for example, go beyond the development, go beyond Punta Cana, which everybody knows, for example. Now they're going beyond that. So you go to a beach where I used to go, like surfing, which was completely pristine, to now, the whole buffer zone in between the beach and in the village, which was more a fisherman community, being destroyed for a hotel resort. Now you're going to have, less access to the beach, this this really is going to affect the livelihood, or is already affecting the livelihoods of these fishermen. They're, of course, under the premise that it's going to be economic development, but they don't have access to work in these places. So, and of course, now their village has less, air, stream, and flow, so it gets hotter and it gets more inconvenient. So these are the type of challenges that these destinations face. They have, different challenges that they need to work towards, and therefore it's a barrier to be able to implement more sustainable practices. So, yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Now, turning to Ms. Beverly Smith. We've heard already quite a few challenges, not quite a few, quite a lot of them. But it would be very interesting to hear from your perspective, Ms. Smith, which ones do you think should be prioritized by the private sector in order to truly enable tangible progress?
There are incredibly many challenges that face sustainability in travel and tourism. Not only have my esteemed panel members already mentioned some, the fact that we have over 80% MSMEs, the fact that our destinations and our prime destinations where everyone wants to go, just so beautiful, are those beautiful SIDS that are becoming very, very changed for both communities and all. The private sector has a lot to do in this. I've recently been speaking to Red Sea Global. Now, you'll have heard, I'm sure, of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia's initiatives, NEOM, the Red Sea Global, Alula, various different examples of what the region is doing to enhance its tourism. I visited there when it was still a fishing village, funnily enough. So I was very lucky to see it in its pristine, beautiful way. Red Sea Global is established, it's beautiful, it's selling luxury, it's selling so much. It's private, it started as a PPP and it now moves to being fully private, and it's aiming to become truly sustainable. Held a meeting with them yesterday, actually, on the work that we can collaborate upon with the Sustainable Tourism Global Centre. And they identified, from a capacity point of view, that there are so many needs. KSA is considered a developing country. The MENA region is considered a developing country. There are areas of the MENA region, for example, that are more interested in whether or not they're going to be able to feed their people rather than consider as a priority climate and climate action. And we have to accept that those facts exist. We all live in this planet, and we have to accept that those situations are there and very current for those particular countries. From a private perspective, they can assist, they can help these developing countries. And they can also help countries across the globe in terms of capacity building. We spoke yesterday about people being unaware of what true sustainability is. One thing we just must be very mindful of is how we define it, what it truly means. You've got The Guardian saying greening jobs. What does greening mean? I'm sure if I asked members of the audience, everyone would mention something slightly different. Yeah? What does greening truly mean? And I note also it says about the different industries. Well, I would argue that the tourism industry itself is one of the biggest industries in the world, in the sense that it cuts across every single industry of every single economy, if you just take a moment to think about it. The private sector then has to focus on exactly what it needs, how it can help, and how it can build from the bottom up. It must build from the bottom up. As one of the panelists has highlighted, you have particular tailored training for particular needs within your establishment, but you also have to start from a point of what is sustainability for us, both in our business, our area, and where it is. And the piece with Red Sea Global is certainly going to be fun in the collaboration work we're doing. So thank you very much for that. Thank you.
Thanks, Beverly. Now, going to Mr. Renato Mbamilo. Sorry for that. I always struggle with certain last names, and a lot of people struggle with mine as well, so if you can correct me, feel free to do it. I kind of like the same question, but I think it's very important to also have the perspective from the employers. What are the main challenges to attract a workforce that it's already, like looking forward to having these skills, or that is already trained in this? What from your experience would be like the main challenges from this perspective?
Thank you very much. I'm Renato Mbamilo. So from Tanzania, working with the Association of Tanzania Employers. Not Tanzanian because it serves all employers in the country, whether be national or local or international businesses within the country. So, and my work is, I'm heading the Department of Research and Policy, and really our work is to align business practices with development efforts or goals. With respect to capacity building, actually the challenges are different from developed world and developing world, where exactly I'm coming from. And also I'll be speaking on the perspective of employers. Now, my fellow panelists spoke about awareness, and I would like to link on that with the mindset. Okay, I agree that there's little awareness on this agenda in my country, especially for small and medium enterprises. You might be aware that in our economy, the informal sector takes the majority, and most of them are operating in the informal sector. So their level of awareness is very little. And again, there is an issue of mindset, and most of them view the sustainability agenda as a compliance requirement rather than like being a driver of technology or jobs creation and the likes. So that really becomes a serious challenge in our country and actually in our region. And in addition to that, is on curriculum or curricula that we have from our training institutions. Most of them do not integrate sustainability or environmental, social, and governance requirements. So it becomes a little challenging when the graduates from these training institutions come into the labor market, or they maybe will be speaking or hearing about sustainability on their first times, and so. So this also a big challenge, and that really is connected with the manner these curricula are developed. This recently, in the past 2 or 3 years, we came up with a project just trying to showcase like how differently we could be doing things in our country, where now we are like a TVET project. TVET is Technical Vocational Education Training project, where we had some sort of inclusive curriculum development, like the private sector, the employers, together with the training institutions, and the government with the regulatory authorities worked together, see like what are the requirements, like what the employers need. And because there's been so huge mismatch between, on skills mismatch, between what employers want and what training institutions teach. And actually, yes, so that really affects employability of these students. So for us, we came with this approach where the three of us, like the government, training institutions, and employers, worked together in terms of developing curriculum, telling them what we really want, and on all that. And really also, okay, this is serious. Like the trainers themselves lack also awareness on the sustainability concepts. You see, what we did upskilling training. We exposed these trainers, especially those who are training on hotel management issues, to the employers to see what are the latest technology and demands and all that for about 6 months, and then they came back to their institutions using the inclusive curricula that were inclusively developed. They trained some batches of students, and where now where the graduates of these trainings, programs, were highly demanded. Like all of them were employed. So there is such an issue as well. So just funding has been an issue, but there are so many. For the interest of time, I think we need to move into the second question also. Thanks.
Yes, yes, thank you very much. I think there's already this was a great panorama of the great complexity of a sector that has so many stakeholders, and that, in fact, the challenges that it might have as an industry, it's also affected by the different type of scenarios that developing countries have, that developed countries face, that island nations specifically come to. And the role from the private sector in all this, with its own challenges, but also the importance of identifying what are the specific needs in order to actually target them. So let's move to the second round of questions, where we will be focusing on green skills and jobs in the tourism sector. I would like to ask you, Ms. Zapata, what tools are necessary to promote green jobs and train local communities with green skills, but especially in the regions that are heavily dependent on tourism, as you mentioned, these island nations, these countries that are also highly vulnerable to climate change?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So one of the main things that we need to do is do more community-centric approaches. To really maybe start listening more to them than to our own voices. Sometimes they already have the solutions. I think, island nations probably already, created recycling and upcycling way before that it was, actually a thing in developed nations, right? So we need to listen more. If you look at their, ancestral heritage, they already know about a bioclimatic infrastructure. So you need to listen to them instead of bringing, solutions that are good for other areas, and really, listen to what their needs are and how they handle things. So I think it's very important, to really give them that space. The second thing is youth. Bring youth, to the table. They're already, the youth in the island nations are already using AI solutions. I was here 2 days ago in a session talking about, AI, and there were some, islanders that had won some awards because they created AI solutions for early warning systems in their communities for climate change. So getting the youth, involved, they're already way ahead, of all of us. And of course, digital solutions, is important. And I always think that, raising awareness through storytelling is always, it's key. People can learn, from when you tell a story that alludes to them and that they can engage in, and they can start understanding. So, process-oriented, skills and things like that. Like, I think you need to start by engaging them, by, storytelling, and so that they can start understanding, how it relates to them, and how it can make their life and their communities better if they change the way they're doing things, for example, today. But again, listening to what their solutions are, I think that's an important component in capacity building in SIDS in developing countries.
Thank you very much. I think this is a very interesting point. On one side, the traditional knowledge from our indigenous peoples, from our local communities, and at the same time, the innovative part. So bringing those together, I think it's an amazing way of approaching it. Mr. Durvand, you gave us already a lot of food for thought, and I really love this idea of having this holistic approach to all these challenges. So thinking about that, and thinking about the way that the working dynamics have also changed, and specifically in my mind is this part of the informal sector that you mentioned earlier. So how can there be a way to approach, to try to build up green skills when we have a sector, an industry that relies so much on informal activities? How can we approach them? What would be your view on that? Sorry, this is very improvised because I really stayed thinking on that fact that you mentioned earlier.
That's fine. ILO, the International Labor Organization, I was involved in a project in Southeast Asia, in some of the poor countries of Southeast Asia, where we did skills development for tourism with a big focus on hospitality. And we wove green skills into general skills. And this is a message I'd really like to deliver to this audience. Let's weave in sustainability to general practices. My dream is someday we stop using the word sustainable. It just becomes known as good practices, right? And I think in general in capacity building and training across the board, I'll come back to informal economy in a second, but across the board, if we transform skills training for new staff in travel and tourism to weave in sustainability from the start, that's essential. We just have to stop putting sustainability over there. Because sometimes they'll contradict each other. If we just look at purely job skills training, look at a housekeeper in a hotel, large or small. How do they get judged in their performance? They get judged in their performance by making the room look beautiful quickly. So even when a hotel has some policies of put your card here to, skip linen laundry for a day, housekeeping still changes the towels and the linens. Why? Because their job is to make the room look beautiful quickly. They don't know that they should be saving laundry energy. If it's built in, when we onboard staff, forget sustainability over there. So gradually over time, so we have to teach existing people skills training for green. But let's start onboarding training with sustainability built in. And get rid of the word sustainability. Just incorporate the aspects of it, the attributes of it into business practice. Now to come back to what I was saying with ILO. So we developed skills training, and it's available in many Southeast Asian languages, pretty much free of charge. If we get more international institutions doing that, of creating simple tools, we've made videos, which is very helpful, to the informal economy, and we just wove the green practices into skills development. And I think we just need more of that. And so if we have international institutions teaching low-skilled, so much of the informal economy is low-skilled, not all of it, but much of it. Some of it's very entrepreneurial, figuring out that after a guest hikes someplace, it's like I've got some chilled drinks, right? So there's, informal economy is a broad range of things. But if we focus on it in terms of kind of lower skilled people, that is really going to require international institutions creating content that's simplistic, that's free of charge and available, because informal by nature is not going to have the resources or the will to kind of create the stuff. So we just have to get international organizations, municipal governments, national governments involved in disseminating inexpensive, simple messages on very simple things.
I'm happy to say I share your dream, hopefully. We can make a progress in that and make sustainability part of our daily life. Well, moving forward, because just being mindful of the time, Mr. Mbabinlo, I would like to ask you, how can businesses develop green skills while ensuring two things, I think, that are important: the business opportunities, the profitability, but also securing labor rights?
Missed your question. How do businesses do what?
How can businesses develop green skills, thinking of two things? First, of keeping their profitability, keeping their business opportunities, their efficiency, as Mr. Durban was also mentioning, but also keeping in mind the just transition framework, securing labor rights.
Okay. It starts with the notion that sustainability brings in cost saving, the understanding that sustainability brings in profitability. It starts with that one. If we employers really understand that if we embark on sustainability initiatives, will be more profitable than we are today, then we'll be moving into that. But for us to get into skills development and capacity building, we really need to work together, as I said before, with the training institutions along with the government, and see, for us as employers, we really in a position to tell like the knowledge generating institutions like what we really need, you see? And for the knowledge generating institutions to consider what the employers need as for them to articulate into their training programs, and produce graduates that will be employable to us. That will be our contribution. But another one will be on funding. If we really see that if we invest into green skills development, it will be profitable to us. We compare costs and benefits that we'll be getting from investing into green skills development, then employers, private sectors will be venturing into green skills development. And the other area is participating actually in decision making, where now our voices will be heard by the especially government at all levels, and also requiring governments to provide budgetary allocations. And actually from our side particularly, it's not just allocating budget, but also disbursing the allocated budget into the skills development. So that is a way that we could be participating as raising our voices into this skills development space, and also telling the knowledge generating institutions like what we really need, like what the labor market needs for them to consider, also for ourselves giving some funds or providing some funds into this. And that is already done in our country particularly. Like we have the so-called skills development levy, where we pay around 4% of monthly wage bill actually, on monthly basis throughout the year, is where now we contribute into green skills development. That way I would say, if I'm afraid if I have answered like your question in the manner you anticipated. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I think one of the points that you raised is really important, and this is this synergy of participating, of being present in policymaking, in bringing together governments, in bringing together business people, in bringing together the work, in bringing together civil society. That's definitely crucial, not only in the tourism sector, but I think that's a very important component of it. Ms. Smith, I would like to ask you, where do you believe there is an opportunity to expand the development and integration of green skills within the sector?
I think it's vast, absolutely vast. Again, picking up points of my esteemed colleagues on the panel, this is about us all having a sustainability lens. We look at everything we do with a sustainability lens. It's critical for us. And I completely concur with Randy. It'd be so lovely when we stop saying sustainability, because when we do that, we put it over there, we compartmentalise it. There's nothing compartmental about sustainability, fundamentally. It cuts across everything you do, everything you choose, everything you decide to consume, everything you do, the choices that you make in your life, fundamentally. And this comes back to our young people, right? To our youth, to our communities, to those who impactfully want to change, okay? Change what the world they have. I mean, believe it or not, I've been 16 once, and I honestly thought I could change the world, and I was going to change it so beautiful. It was going to be so beautiful. Now, you've got to grab hold of that joy for living. You really have. Because that's where so many of the answers lie. It's very, very true that people already know the answers, really. You don't necessarily have to give people this is your subject that you will be teaching. Here are all the criteria. Here are all the... No, you don't really need to do that. If you ask people the honest question, well, how could we do this better? How could we improve this? They can tell you the answer. And the beauty is that young people tell you all the exciting answers that you'd not thought of. They really do. And they baffle me with AI. I'll put my hand up and say that. And they baffle me with their knowledge of all the stuff they're doing. And, my nieces and nephews all tell me stuff that I had no idea and take the phone out my hand and busily start doing it for me. Now, if I'm in that situation as someone who thinks they know something about something, then they are the ones that really know how they want their world to be. They want it to be. They want it to grow. Now, in terms of green skills and capacity building and such, the beauty of any organisation, any large company, any small company, any MSME, any company of that nature, that business has a range of ages within it in general terms, okay? So you utilise the skills across that age range, yeah? Older members of staff have so much to give because they have so much experience, they have so much knowledge, they know things that work, things that didn't work so well, but they'll try it again anyway in a different way. And the youth come up with so many fabulous ideas that you'd not even thought of, really. And there, in that way, the youth can drive green skilling, green change. But we do need to not think of it in terms of compartmentalisation. We need to think about the way youth can be utilised. And obviously at the Sustainable Tourism Global Centre, we have a huge raft of work that we do around youth initiatives, and our youth as stakeholders. And part of that is capacity building, capacity training, not just for them as champions and ambassadors and search for sustainability. No, that's one key and important facet, don't get me wrong, because it's an awareness-raising activity. But they are also part of the change makers, the true change makers. Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you for that, Beverly. Definitely the youth. I always kind of have this thing that I don't like thinking about the future when we have an emergency right now, but I do think that investing in youth is investing in the present and in the future, both at the same time. So that's a great point of view. Now, let's just wrap up this session with the last round of questions. So I'll start with Mr. Durband again. As I said, this is a section where we would like to hear more about your experiences and actual examples that you could share. So thinking about how do we disseminate these new skills, this knowledge within the tourism industry, what could you share with us?
A couple of case studies, good examples. Two prominent online travel agents in Asia, Agoda.com and Traveloka, which is sort of the giant of Indonesia, but really growing. Both of them have been providing our training for hotels to their hotel partners, because these OTAs want to display more information about sustainability, so they see the need for the hotels to become more sustainable. So that's a wonderful example, and it's not expensive. So brands like that, they love it, and they're going to continue doing more of it, and we're growing those programs. Another great example of success, in the region, I'm in the region, we do a great deal in Turkey with the Turkish Ministry of Tourism. They have legally mandated that every hotel in Turkey, that's 20,000 hotels in that big country, by 2030 must be fully certified on sustainability. And we're 2-3 years into the program. We help train an army of trainers to train sustainability skills in Turkish language to hotels large and small all throughout the country. The scale of that is lower cost by having scale, right? And because the businesses need to follow the legal mandate to climb a ladder on sustainability, they want those skills. So here's a case where a government doing a very enlightened thing. The money of it is manageable because it was a 7-year plan to start with low-cost training and then require hotels to show evidence of compliance to about 1/3 of our standard by August of this past year. 18,000 hotels reached it. And then by the end of next year, they have to show compliance to 2/3 of our standard and forward. That kind of stepwise program we're finding very successful in the world. So you start with climate. Right, I said earlier our criteria include social issues and so forth. So when we suggest to businesses and governments, take off bites and then work your way up holistically, of course it starts with climate. So everybody prioritizes that. So for this event we're here this week, we're absolutely putting that focus. And so that, kind of a master plan taken in stages, figuring out a way to create scale so the whole process is affordable. That's that kind of model we're seeing with great success in business and government around the world.
Thank you very much for that. Ms. Beverly Smith, I would also like to hear an example from your side, but also thinking about the role of cross-sector partnerships, thinking about the role that you have at the STEC. I think that would be very interesting to hear as well.
So thanks very much. It's like mic error there, but thank you. So there is a number of things that the Sustainable Tourism Global Centre is planning for 2025. One of those is our sustainable tourism global hubs. Now, this is a project that we're engaging with large-scale companies. We're thinking of the chambers and the chambers of commerce on an international scale. Obviously, you're probably aware they have federations based across a number of different regions, countries, and such like. There's 116 in total. So as a pilot next year, we're looking at establishing those hubs for, as a priority, the destination-based large companies and smaller companies about tourism, obviously surrounding tourism, hospitality. Now, those areas there, they are going to form the basis of a tourism hub within the federation itself. And that federation has agreed for us to establish our training base within that. So we're looking very much to grow across the globe the whole notion of working directly with MSMEs associated with tourism within global destinations. That's one of our key initiatives that we hope is really going to start to move and shake at destination management level, and also with those large and MSME companies based within that area. Another key one I've referred to earlier with the Red Sea Global project is quite a huge and expansive project, because it's not just about the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. It will expand beyond that into the MENA region. And this is a process where we're linking all of the training that will be established for the training centre. We are establishing, in collaboration, a partnership with their academy. So they've set up an academy based within the Red Sea Global that will actually train its staff in sustainability and in travel and tourism sector. So it will be quite expansive. It won't just be for that area, it will be beyond, much beyond that. Other youth initiatives in terms of champion work. So we're working to establish our first, I'm very proud to say, our sustainable tourism hub based within university. We're starting as a pilot in our vicinity, and then we hope to expand using the networks we have across universities. So we have 5 champions. or for want of a better word, I don't mind, maybe they'll like to call themselves something slightly different. But, you know, we're starting with the five champions. They're under, in effect, guidance as to exactly what they're going to achieve. They're measured, they're targeted, they have KPIs in terms of sustainability and spreading the word of sustainability in travel and tourism. We start that pilot shortly. So we're working on a number of different levels and on obviously both focused quite close, but also very, very expansive across the globe.
Thank you. Now, for just thinking about like other type of scenarios, I would like to give the word to Mr. Mavilo and then to Ms. Zapata, just to have examples from Tanzania, from island nations or developing countries, or any from your experience that could like serve us to close this very interesting panel, please.
I will start, right? So with us from Tanzania specifically, we leverage membership and partnerships. It's where we disseminate these sustainable tourism training modules and resources to the members of our association, and also because we are working in tripartite with employees federation, employers federation, where I come from, and the government. So we really work together, and we also circulate or disseminate these resources, where we also raise awareness on these issues. Then secondly, we have a recognition program known as Employer of the Year Award. And recently we have included a category on sustainability. It used not to be there before, where we recognize, actually we do survey every year to see which businesses are there to the standards that are there. We have agreed to adhere into, and find out like the best performers. And in December every year, we do recognize those who do better. And in this way, it's like, this acts like an incentive for them to continue adopting these practices. And also, we use social media. Our communication team really engages membership through social media, and one of the key, important areas is on this sustainable development, and particularly tourism sector. So that is what really we do, some of it.
Ms. Zapata, please.
So we at Sustainable Travel International, we do capacity building and training programs at a destination level, and also for the private sector specifically. So, some examples, I just recently finished the climate action plan for the island of St. Kitts. We did training with the private sector, also with the public sector. When we work, for example, with the private sector, with the public sector, very interesting to see, how they started understanding how they all have a piece of the puzzle. Those that were working in water catchment to sustainable mobilities to mangrove restoration all had a piece of the puzzle. And so by working together in one place, in one session, they started understanding, better, and how they can collaborate, towards this, higher goal, which is climate action planning and adaptation for their islands. Other programs, for example, in the South Pacific, working on a sustainable management tool specifically for hotels in the South Pacific. Pilot destinations were Samoa and Fiji, also putting them in a place where they can learn these skills, and also in a non-competitive place where you had the engineers, where you have the procurement specialists, where you had owners also share knowledge and skills, and even knowledge and skills between Fiji and Samoa, some things that they were doing in one place that they could do in the other. There was also some cross a knowledge sharing in those places. In Palau, more grassroots initiatives or more grassroots training. In Palau, for example, we work with women-led producer groups and bringing them business skills so that they can, cater to the tourism industry with their food products, with their artisanal products, and that, of course, enhances the tourism experiences and of course reduces the need for imported goods. So, and of course, creating opportunities for women, so empowering women. And in the private sector, again, we work on developing training programs specifically for, let's just say, for a large tour operator, and for them to be able to train their product developers and their tour operators, for example, in developing more sustainable products, more climate-friendly, products. And even working with them, even working with a sustainability director, you start learning some of the gaps that they have. For example, we asked for pictures because we want to be able to make it more centric to their products in the training content. And they provided a picture of a child, for example, picking up a starfish, and bringing them out of the water. That this is not, environmentally friendly, or being too close to a whale shark, and that's also not environmentally friendly. And you start understanding, some of the gaps that they have just by, having that exchange. So, yeah, a lot to be done. Even those that are, again, working in the sector, there's a lot. I think you mentioned that as well. Even the trainers, need training. So there's a lot to do, but these are some of the examples and programs that we've worked on.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank all of you for being here today, for sharing your experiences, your knowledge with us. And just before giving the floor to our next session, I would like to ask Gonzalo to come up here so we can all take a picture. And thank you very much to all our audience to be here, to be present, and hope you stay with us the rest of the Private Sector Capacities Day here at the Capacity Building Hub. One last thing, thank you to the capacity building team. They're always awesome and always very, very helpful.